I can say is, welcome home, Ron. Welcome back to the MAGA movement where you have always belonged and where we will welcome you and be honored to count you among our legion as we go forward unifying this Republican Party for victory. I mean, you guys know I'm a Florida man, right? So this is good news for me. I didn't like when mom and dad would be fighting. I like the fact that we've got two of our great folks on the same team, and a reasonable person might honestly ask the question to Nikki Haley, what are you still doing in this race? Nikki Haley's not going to be the Republican nominee for president. So you know what, to my good friends in Iowa, the great victory that was the springboard to this moment, you made this happen. You helped us bring this together, and there's a little bit of cleanup work to do, and my good friends in the Granite State are going to make sure that we do that. We don't want Nikki Haley unless you want to live in a world where they're raising the gas tax, supporting amnesty, opposing the wall, and wanting to start 3 wars before lunchtime tomorrow. I really appreciate how President Trump viewed foreign policy. Because with everything going on in the world right now, we are less safe. Our allies are less safe. And American leadership requires a good instinct in foreign policy. And what we saw with President Trump is he didn't always do things paint by numbers. He didn't always forecast his moves. Now, I remember being with President Trump when he saw those images of those children who were the victims of chemical weapons in Syria, and he saw those kids burned up, and there weren't a whole lot of speeches. There wasn't a whole lot of hand-wringing and bedwetting. There were just 68 Tomahawk missiles that landed on the air base where those attacks came from, and then there were no more chemical attacks on those very people. You see, that is peace through strength. That is what we get with a President Donald J. Trump. It's not just the DeSantis endorsement that gives us momentum. If any of you watched or were at that Trump rally we had in Manchester last night, there was a special energy, and I want to draw attention to a particular point. When President Trump made a specific commitment to build a VA hospital in New Hampshire. You know, I've been running for office since about 2010, and it's really true that not a lot of politicians were talking about veteran health care until President Trump came on the scene, and so many veterans were drawn to our America First movement, and he listened and he understood. You know, Ginger even says sometimes Trump's an even better listener and a better host than he is a politician. But in this case, you know, he listened to these veterans, and we did 2 really important things. First, we passed the VA choice bill so that veterans weren't locked into just one system at the VA. And second, the most obvious thing, the thing President Trump enjoyed the most, we actually passed a law so you could fire the people at the VA who weren't taking good care of our veterans. And so we had it going. We had reduced the call times. We had reduced the wait periods. We had more specialists that were getting engaged in providing care. And then what Joe Biden did, he comes in and says, oh, well, if you want VA choice, you have to go through the VA to get it. Now, what kind of sense does that make? They wrote every regulation to make it harder for our veterans. One thing I know for sure, when Donald Trump is back in the White House, the best health care that is provided anywhere on the planet Earth will be provided to America's veterans, and we will fulfill that commitment. And you know, when I talk to vets now, gosh, there's some that look at the military we have right now, and it is heartbreaking to see the patriotism of our service members not sufficiently matched by the judgment and the decision-making of some of these people that Joe Biden has put at the Pentagon. I think when that Chinese spy balloon was flying overhead, their first request was to ask it what its pronouns were. And you know, it's a real thing, because right now we are missing the recruiting for the Army by very large margins, and our enemies see that. I had a case in my district recently where I had to tell my constituents that we will have to decommission Coast Guard vessels, not because we don't have the need, not because we can't get the vessels underway, but because we don't have enough human beings to put on those vessels because of the recruiting shortfalls. And just as I was learning this, I had one of my constituents reach out to me and say, well, Matt, I had served in the Coast Guard, went off, did some entrepreneurial stuff, but I want to come back and serve in the Coast Guard. And she wrote a letter to the recruiter and said, I want to come back, I've reviewed all the policies, and I've prayed about it. I can't use like 87 different pronouns. My faith, my conscience, requires that I call a man and a woman. And she sought an accommodation for her. And she was told by Joe Biden's Coast Guard, after that email, don't even contact them anymore, that her service wasn't needed. And I told that story to a family this morning at a diner in Amherst. And one of the fellows sitting there wasn't a Republican, was not affiliated, and he said, I just don't want the military to be political either way. And I think that's what we want. We want a military that is strong and capable and survivable. Obama wanted a military where we sent people out and didn't even give them the body armor, didn't give them what was necessary to win. And Joe Biden has done something to the military that is even worse by trying to infect it with this terrible disease of wokeism, and he wants to build social justice warriors instead of warriors that can protect America. When Donald Trump is president again, and we clean out that Pentagon of all the Biden appointees, we're going to get the tough, patriotic Americans who represent all of you and all of us, and every one of our service members will have a military that they will be deeply proud of with good reason. I pray every day for those 8,600 service members who were kicked out by this nonsense vaccine mandate that we got repealed. When Trump is in office, he will sign a national defense authorization bill that will restore every one of those patriots with their full rank and back pay. So we're going to fix the military, but we're fixing the military to defend this country, and we have to ask questions about what kind of country is here that we are defending. Right now, we have a border that has been totally surrendered. You saw this last month of 2023, 300,000 encounters. Now, that doesn't count the ones that got away. That doesn't count the ones that slipped through the cracks as our Border Patrol are being turned into processing agents. But just 300,000 that we know of. Now, did you know in 2023, there were 8 million of these people that we know that we released? And I asked recently the Inspector General, well, if we knew who they were, they came, they signed a document, how many of them do we still even know who they are or where they are? And he said, Congressman, 6 million of them, we have no idea who they are, and we have no idea where they are. And that's because they'd come in large groups, and they'd just put one Main Street. Apparently there were 100,000 of them registered at one McDonald's address somewhere in the state of Washington. And they weren't looking because they don't care. Know this about the border. This is not an unsolvable problem. This is not a thing where the eggheads can't figure out what the right mix of technology and law and force protection is necessary. If you go back to the Trump policies of remain in Mexico while you're waiting for your asylum, you stay in the first safe country you come to if you're coming from somewhere else, and we are going to use our public health authorities to say, if you cross the border, you will either be detained or you will be removed. There will not be a total parole release of you into the country to wait for your court date in 2031. And if we do those things, we can secure the border. And it's for our economy, it's for our physical safety, but in a lot of ways, I think it's for the people that are undergoing terrible horrors to get here. The humane thing is not an open border. Anybody, any one of these liberals who thinks an open border is humane, you go down there and you see how these people are treated. And there are folks in bad conditions all over the world. And my heart breaks for them. But America cannot be the world's piggy bank. We cannot be the world's police force. And we are about to have a president who is unapologetic about saying that my first and most solemn duty is to the people of this country. And that is exciting. Now, we haven't even gotten to what's going on in Congress. As you see, I've had some workplace challenges with some of my coworkers. And any of you think sometimes you work with crazy people? So they all sometimes think I'm the crazy one, and I think they're the crazy one. So maybe you could help me sort it out. We have, for my entire time in Congress, funded the federal budget with one up or down vote for the whole year. And we either do one vote to fund everything at levels, or we just say, you know what, that was too hard. We're just going to vote to keep funding everything the way it used to be funded. To me, that is why we are in this debt. If you want to know why we're in the debt, it's because we have designed a system where the people who are the elected leaders are not responsible for any sort of itemized review of the budget. And of course, when you're not looking at everything piece by piece, it all just keeps going. And what does that do? That dilutes your dollar. This is not some victimless crime. Because we won't do a responsible budgeting process, you're paying higher prices everywhere. And Bidenomics has become so toxic, House Democrats won't even utter the phrase when they're on the campaign trail. It's terrible for them, but it's worse for all of us. And so the question, we can't just complain about it. How do you fix it? How do you fix it? And you got to start with budgets that balance. Right? When President Trump, in his first year, he sent us a budget that balanced. And you know what? It wasn't all cuts. He wouldn't cut Social Security. President Trump is not going to allow for cuts to Social Security. But it relied on growth, regulatory reform, and then actually going through these things one by one. And guess what? Maybe we don't borrow money from one country to send it to another, acting like that's what makes us stronger. That makes us look foolish, not like leaders. See, Nikki Haley wants the United States to have this globalist outlook where we have all these responsibilities to all these folks around the world. And in a way, DeSantis endorsing us now, it really creates a contrast of ideas. Because with DeSantis and Trump, you saw a lot of the same ideas. I guess we figured out we wanted Trump instead of Diet Trump, right? And pretty easy. But with Haley, she represents a very different vision for the Republican Party. She represents a vision for that party that is willing to accept forever wars and open borders and higher taxes, because that is what the donor class wants. And that's what concerns me. So we can fix it by engaging in this line item budgeting process that I have pushed for. And if we do that, look, there'll be times when we lose. I mean, this last Congress, I got a lot of criticism because we only got 27 bills to Joe Biden's desk. Now, I don't have a lot of constituents saying we want to make a whole lot of more new federal laws, so I didn't think that was such a bad thing. But here's where we outperformed expectations. In 2022, there were only like 500 votes. In 2023, there were over 700. That's oftentimes the conservative, MAGA, pro-Trump congressman forcing those votes, getting members of Congress on the record. And here's what I can tell you. Right now, that group doesn't have enough courage to save you. If we had enough courage, we would have demanded a closed border before extending government funding. Right? So let's acknowledge that. So how do we fix it? How do we fix it? I know this. Courage is contagious. And if we have a groundswell election for President Trump with a strong mandate, even some of these people who are a little squishy and a little reticent to take the tough votes and to make the hard choices and to endure a little criticism, it's amazing how they get a little more steel in their spine and the hair on the back of their neck stands up a little bit more when President Trump is around to give us vision and leadership. And that's what can excite us all. So those are the budgetary problems and the border problems, but we also have to talk about this weaponized bureaucracy right now, because more than ever before, I think that the government you are paying for is turned against you. We just learned in the House Judiciary Committee that the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, other three-letter agencies were telling banks to record your transactions. Oh, did you say MAGA? Did you say Trump? Did you put Trump on a message and then buy a Bible? Did you buy a Bible and a gun on the same day? That might get you listed as a domestic violent extremist to the FBI. To me, it just means you're a God-fearing, patriotic, constitutional American. And so And so with all due respect to all the other Republicans that have ran, President Trump is uniquely positioned to see the core of the rot in some of these places and to get people there who will do what is absolutely necessary. And it will be challenging, but I think this movement is durable. Because I also sense that Trump 2024 is almost a little different than Trump 2020 and Trump 2016. It's like the same kind of wine, but maybe different years, you know, slightly different taste. And here's what I love about what we're doing right here, right now. It is so inviting, and it is so interconnected, and it's a little bit of everybody and a little bit of America. I mean, I went to that rally last night, and I saw white collar, blue collar, no collar, no shirt, no shoes. No, everybody had shoes. But you know, I saw a little bit of America. And that ultimately is what makes sure that this is something special. So look, Ginger and I, we go all over this country, and we speak to groups in all kind of places. And New Hampshire's a special place for me because I used to spend the summers here in Hanover, New Hampshire at debate camp at Dartmouth College. And amazingly, you all don't think like everyone in Hanover, New Hampshire at Dartmouth College. So it's been great to get to other parts of the state. But I remember swimming in Lake Sunapee in the summer and having people tell me that in the winter it froze over. Which, as a Florida man, I had you might as well have told me that we were going to be transported to Mars, that type of cold could happen. But while it's single digits outside, there is a burning patriotism and a burning love of country in this movement. And you all coming out here and being a part of it with me is something so special. And so, you know, you're here at the tip of the spear with a very specific role. Everyone's got a role in this movement, right? I got my role. President Trump's got his role. The good folks in Iowa, got to say they played their part. They put up a big number on the board. And so now this is your job. You've got that final cleanup, right? You got that final bit of work to do. And my only worry is I don't want folks for even a moment to take it for granted or to think, DeSantis is out. We can have a nice Tuesday. We don't have to worry. Maybe the roads will be icy. But when I even posit that to the people working the counters at places like this, running the establishments, all day they've been looking me dead in the eye and they say, Congressman, we're coming. We are going to be there for our president because we see what they're doing to him. And we get our strength from his strength. And he puts that strength on display for all of us each and every day. And so make that extra phone call, give a ride to the neighbor, because if we do this right, if you get that last bit of cleanup done, then we don't have to spend tens of millions of dollars Republicans attacking other Republicans. And you know what we can do? We can focus that effort on those swing states and election integrity. Because if you ever want your government to have integrity, if you ever want your borders to have integrity, our elections must have integrity again. And I don't want to be in a position where we're having to fool with this after the fact. I want to have such an overwhelming victory, and you guys have such a critical role in that. New Hampshire is a special place. I want to take some of your questions, but before, do we have someone here who thinks they've gone to the first like, what's the oldest primary anyone's been to? I met a Kennedy Democrat this morning who had gone like in the 60s. Has anyone got any 80s? No? This is a new crowd. All right. 90? All right. 76. All right. Can anyone stand up? We can let us at least thank you for being one of our greatest participants. Oh, he's got one too. All right.